Yes.
Oh my goodness. Tricia, thank you so much for doing this. I'm excited to have this conversation.
I am really excited. Welcome everybody. I am Tricia Dycka of The Happy Empath. And today I am chatting with Emily Maher. Maher?
Hmm? Emily Maher, yes.
I'm
And
sorry.
actually, it's so funny. My author name is Emily Tamayo Maher, because even though I didn't change my name when I got married, my husband has been such an inspiration to get me writing and everything. So that's what I made as my pen name. So yes, Emily Tamayo Maher.
Yes. And I am super excited. Today we're really talking about happiness and creativity and stop getting in our own way so that we can have that creative influence and we can be happier. And the more creative that we are, I am learning, I am really enjoying it. And part of that is actually pulling myself out of the equation instead of, you know, trying to force. And that's something I have done.
Mhm.
Like that's for everything. That is for writing, that is for my newsletters, that is for content. Um, I would make myself almost feel like I have to and I should instead of getting myself out of the way and being happy to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I think so much of having a creative practice. And so I talk about writing books all the time. So I kind of, I'm a writing coach. And so I love using that metaphor. But I think, and I know you're taking a class right
Yeah.
now that's led by Mike Dooley, an amazing author. And so much, I feel like, when I'm coaching people to write books or whatever I'm doing, it's about kind of getting the ego out of the way and raising your vibe. I'm working on my second book right now, and it was actually a couple days ago that I realized when I think about becoming more creative or, becoming more your higher self,
Mhm.
it's kind of like an ink stain that, you start, it comes in a little, but then it just kind of bleeds outwards and it just makes up more and more of your life. Just like raising your vibe, when you're trying to bring more positivity in the
Mhm.
world and really looking through the lens of love and things like that, it's
Mhm.
not so much a fight as kind of this interior expansion. And that's the way I've looked at it more and more.
I like that, this interior expansion, because when we're outside of ourselves looking for these answers, I have found myself chasing an idea of what it should be versus
Mm-hmm.
just sitting my ass down and chilling out. Like one of the things that I am actually incorporating is a ritual to kind of get myself started.
Yeah.
And I know before we got on, we were talking about rituals. And one of the things that I did personally is I got myself a bunch of tea candles. And I
Oh, that's
just,
so nice.
before I do anything, I just light them and I sit here and I stare at the flame and I'm like, all right, let's get out of your way and stop expecting it to be a certain way. I think that's what we have in our head. I think that, oh, you got an author, it's a great book. They sat down and all the words just poured out. And
Yeah, no, it did not happen that way. Sorry.
it's true. It's like, I'm like,
That's
look at these great
laughable.
books. I love these books. And we get stuck on how the creative process should be instead of just allowing it to be messy or like I don't know about you, but I know me when I am in the shower and I post it, like I'll think of a question and I'll go in the shower. Next thing I know, I'm getting all these answers and I'm like, oh my God, you're getting out of your own way. You're washing your body. You're paying attention to the water versus your mind running a mile a minute.
Yeah, you're relaxing, and then
Mhm.
creativity just bursts open so much when you're not forcing, but you're relaxing. That's a classic. And I mean, especially for me, because I'll hold so much tension in my shoulders. So
Mhm.
just, being in the shower, those muscles release, and all of a sudden, I have a million ideas, and it's so nice. And actually, on the topic of rituals, there are two things that I'd love to share that I found so often. I mean, creativity in so many ways it's an adventure. And when you look at it as an adventure, you know, there are going to be ups and downs, there are going to be discoveries, there are going to be practices, tools, you know, just toss everything into that adventure. But I know for a fact when it comes to creativity, you're going to go further with a habit that you crave, which tea candles can go a long way. Just having that ambiance of romance in front of you. You know, whether it's, you know, your favorite warm beverage or a special cafe that you go to, or sometimes I'll put music and even my favorite movies that I've already seen a million times, I'll just put those in the background so that I'm comfortable and it's something that I want to come back to. And so I think those rituals are so important.
Yeah.
But actually, one of the things that I've really, you know, developed and kind of glommed onto in the last 2-3 years is something that I learned in another class, which was manifesting through the chakras. And so, you know, if anybody practices yoga, they talk Kundalini yoga, talks a lot about ascending the chakras. So starting at the root and then going through the spiritual stages of liberation or enlightenment. And so this is another thing that I just love to talk about. So excuse me if I go on a little, but I'll make it short. But, you know, what that is, so in Kundalini yoga, when you're going through these ascending levels of the chakras, the teaching is that you're returning to God, that God came out of, you know, nothing and then manifested, right? Which has turned into all of this that we're learning about, you know, right? Raising your vibe and manifesting. And so I started to study that, and it was such a cool pattern. So if you go down the chakras, which is considered the feminine line, the line going into being, the line going into the creative project you're making, your book, your painting, your, you know, your business, your social media, you know, revolution or whatever it is you're creating. You start with inspiration in the crown chakra. Then you go to visualization, kind of structure, you know, outlining and writing in the third eye, the throat chakra, which is finding your voice, heart, which is loving the practice, solar plexus, which is kind of perfecting, making it not perfectionist, but editing in as far as book language. Then there's birthing that creative project into the world in the sacral chakra, and then rooting it and spreading the message and just reaching out like the roots of the tree, and making it safe and strong and stable. And the reason that, you know, when you were talking about your tea candles, is that the solar plexus is willpower. Yes. And so often when we're trying to, you know, bring in a new health practice, can be seen in this way. We think we need to do it through willpower, but actually there is so much, you know, love, truth, vision, and inspiration that actually fuels that project and helps you do it so much more naturally than if you're just forcing it and pushing it into the world. So yes. for me, that's what it means to get out of your own way. Use all of these different values that we have, you know, inspiration, love, etc., and just don't push. There are a lot of different spiritual forces at work.
Yes. And I think sometimes when we're trying to get creative, we forget to either ask for the creativity, which is seriously just ask to have that connection with your guides, the universe, angels, whatever it is to you. Ask to have that connective universal source. And then the other thing, which is something I've been doing too a lot lately, is I've been going to the beaches and getting rock.
I love it.
Yeah, doing some rock painting. Here's a shell painting, you know, little but just to get out of your own way, just to stop and say, all right,
exactly.
I'm struggling here. Go do something. Finger painting, for God's sakes. I haven't done finger painting in a while, but I do have finger paints that I'm gonna bring out. And it's that creative process. It doesn't have to be a certain way. And we're forgetting that we're connected already to our intuition. We're already connected to that God piece, that universal piece within us. And just sit down and ask for that guidance. And sometimes you'll get that hit. Go outside and take a walk. Stop that force, stop that male energy that's saying you got to, and get back into the feminine, But you need both coins of this, both sides of the coins, to be creative as well. Sometimes you need more of one than the other. It's instead of judging yourself because of it, instead of forcing it, it is that sit back. Sometimes it's sit back and go play. And people are like, say what? But it is that sit back and play. We were talking about doing yoga, and I've just started I've just started Qigong, which I really like.
Awesome.
It's those precise movements, and it's that breathing, and you're getting out of your head. You're getting out of that thought, that monkey mind, where it is taking you down that rabbit hole and bringing you back to center.
Absolutely. And I think you have brought up so many good points in that. There's the metaphor that it's an adventure. And one phrase that kind of came into my head early when I was writing my first book was the quest begins with questions.
Yes.
As far as writing goes, I think it's not that we can't figure out what to say. Sometimes you have to think of what to ask. Like, it is that question, like, because a creative process is a discovery. You don't go into it knowing all the answers, and you'll actually be a different person once you finish that creative project, however big or however small. And so the important thing is, like, drawing on a seashell. I love that you play around and you allow yourself to be humble and allow it to change you. And it's funny. So I did last week, I have a group, it's called the Writer's Block. And we did something we called the Writing and Yoga Staycation, because, we're in quarantine. We're all in our houses and we kind of all need a break every once in a while. So we did a yoga pose and a yoga pose, a writing assignment, and an artist date, just to, refresh creativity. And that's all still available if anybody's interested. But I remember that for finding your voice, the yoga pose I suggested was the lion's breath, where you just, you stick out your tongue, you open your mouth wide, and you just do that breathing practice. Yeah. And it feels so silly, which feels so great. It's one of the most childlike practices. But when you're loose and you're just going with the flow, I think that's the best way to find what it is you're supposed to create.
Yes, I do. I do like the yoga, the lion's breath.
I know it makes you laugh at yourself first thing in the morning. You drink your coffee, you do your lion's breath. Yeah.
Yes. And one of my rituals for my day is that cup of coffee. I love that cup of coffee. I love to just sit and just kind of review my day. What's my intention? How do I want to feel about my day? And another thing that I just started putting into practice because of the course I'm taking with Mike Dooley, it is asking questions at night before. I'm actually writing. I have a little journal. I have enough of them. It's like, my journals are everywhere. But I have a journal, and I'm asking out questions that I'm looking for answers. And there are questions about so many different things. It's not just say, what's my path or what's my purpose? It's, I want to know, like, what's the meaning of life, or what is really channeling mean? And what was the one that I asked last night? Oh my God, I can't remember. But when I wake up in the morning, I'm trying to think, did I dream? What were the messages in those dreams? And I think one was about creativity. I did. I think it was what do I need for more creativity? And the dream that I had was fish and water.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Flow, colors, imagination, like all of these things came out. And I'm like, that's a really great idea, you know. But questions are they're a good point in all of this, is asking bigger questions, asking, get beyond the what's my purpose, which is a huge one, yes, but just start, like, I'm looking at the universe, and how can I broaden or expand my knowledge, expand my growth, expand my creativity. And again, all of this, for me, has to be done in a fun way. It has to be fun.
And I think, doing dream work is always such a great bridge between intuition and then, your waking hours, which is such a great thing, because a lot of those messages, even during the day, you'll get ideas, or you'll get creative visions or messages, or I tend to get a lot of dialogues in my ear, like, I think that'll be funny, I'll write that down. But you strengthen that muscle by practicing with your dreams. I think that's such a great place to start.
Yeah, it really
and
is.
that's something that he recommended in that class.
Ask a question for the journal, like, or no, it was the woman doing the class with suggested that, I think. One of them, Hope and Mike, that are doing this. So I really do enjoy that. And the other piece I think that's really important for us is paying attention to our intuition. That's one that we love to ignore, because either it's like, that's a crazy ass idea, I can't see myself doing it, or you wonder, really, should I? And sometimes, like, I got an intuitive hit. I did have the Happy Empath. It was a group for empaths. And
exactly, that's where those ideas come from.
yes, but mine was to close the group, to archive the group. And wow. I'm like, are you nuts? And I did. At least for the time being, it's been archived so I can focus on other things. And that was something that I actually debated and argued with my intuition over. But now that I did it, I see why. So when you get those intuitive hits that you're like, no way, I shouldn't do it, or that's too crazy an idea, try it, because you can always undo it. I can always reopen the group. I can always, stop doing, or, pull it back and do something else. It's not the be all and end all. Like, this is, there is nothing in life. There's always more than one road. There's more than one possibility. There is more than one opportunity. So it doesn't have to always be the one way we think.
Yes. And another thing that's so fruitful from that is finding time. And I remember, before, now I am so lucky that I work as a writing coach. I work as an author coach full time. And so I feel really lucky that pretty much 8 hours a day, I'm pursuing my dream. It's a real business, so there are a lot of real responsibilities, etc. But it is, the intuitive mission I feel called to. But before I was in this position, the place that developed was just by sectioning off time. I mean, for me, that goes back to coffee, which you brought up a little earlier. I mean, I have a 6-year-old son, I'm a breadwinner for the family. And before I was working as a writing coach, I was a school teacher, and he was a toddler at that time. And I remember the early mornings, those were my times for questions. And, I know everybody says, just get up a little earlier so you have a time for yourself. And I think that's so rewarding. But even finding that time by closing something down that's not working anymore. And one fun little practical trick I used to be able to get up earlier is that I never thought about getting up early every day. I would kind of look at my week and just have one day which I would get up early for myself. And so it was something I craved, again, to be able to have that quiet time with my coffee for myself. And so when I would do it one day a week, then of course that started turning into 2 days a week, 3 days a week. That's where I birthed my creative project. That's where everything started, is just by, it's time to transition out of being a school teacher into being an entrepreneur and an artist and a writer. And, still I had a lot of financial responsibility, but I was able to do it very successfully by blossoming something and nurturing it into being. And then it was a gradual transition. And one thing, just kind of, if you feel intuitively that it's time to shut something down.
Yeah.
I love this idea of, there are things in your life that are spring, summer, winter, and fall. And so the spring stuff are the things that are just blossoming, that you need to find that little space for, even though it hasn't proven itself yet. And then, summer is the stuff that's in full blossom. Fall is the stuff that's getting a little old. But then there are some things that are the winter things in your life where it's just, yes, this has gone cold, it's time to hibernate that.
Yeah.
And by hibernating those things that are starting to die out, make more room for spring.
Yes. And it's knowing the difference. It's knowing the difference and not
exactly
forcing the issue. I archived it. It's still there. I'm still available to all the people in there. But I've opened myself up for really helping and training empaths in their life path and creating this newness. So for me, it was like, yes, like I can really now do that. And I love what you're saying about not forcing yourself to get up in the morning, but having that time for yourself. And that doesn't matter if you're an early bird or you're a night owl. It's just that piece that you can do it. A trick that I've learned is, like, I wanted to be up this morning by 6:30. So I said to the universe, it was like 11 something last night. I said, please wake me up at 6:30. I really want to get up at 6:30. I have things I need to accomplish that I really would love to do tomorrow morning. Do you know? 6:30, I'm like, wow, time to get up. So, and again, instead of doing that alarm where it jars you, maybe try asking the universe, I want to get up at 6:30 in the morning or 5:30 or whatever time it is that you're asking. And, people are like, they don't sleep well. And I'm like, ask for it. So like when I do every night anyway, I'm like, all right, I really would love a great restful night's sleep. And I really want to wake up at this time. And so it's that creative piece. Always ask for it. Just always being in the question, always asking. And I think it's it's also that positive expectation that it's going to happen. That positive expectation that the universe has your back and will wake you up and will give you those ideas. And it's up to you to pay attention. It's up to you to create the time to receive it, because if we're always doing, you're not creating that time to receive.
Yes, and I agree. That is a skill that I've used or developed or whatever. But yes, I will definitely. My inner alarm clock will be more accurate than my outer alarm clock, and I love that. However, I do remember. I'll never forget this. It was so funny. There was a time when I was still working as a school teacher, and I launched, the meaning method and the thing I'm doing now while I was still working full time as a school teacher. And so there would be a lot of times when I'd have a lot of responsibilities to take care of in the early mornings before I went off and did my second job. And I'll never forget, I used that inner alarm clock too. I got into a rhythm. And it's so funny because, you kind of have these inner guides and, these little inner helpers. And I remember one morning my inner alarm clock went off and I'm like, I know I've got to get up, but I don't want to. And then it was so funny. My son had crawled into bed with us and he just kicked me in the face. Like, I mean, that sounds bad, but he was very small, but it's so funny. It's like, okay, God's angels and God's above. I understand. You want me to get the hell out of bed. So yeah, it's funny. Yeah, exactly. Intuition, guidance will definitely work on your behalf, even when it's not the most pleasant thing, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny that happened.
I love synchronicities.
Yes. And then there are days too where your body's like, no, I really want the extra sleep. So it's all right.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then you'll find 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there or whatever. You'll carve out that time. Once you start to get used to carving out that time, you will make yourself a priority, because the creativity really and the happiness makes you want to do it more. Makes you want to
Exactly. It's the
forward.
neurochemistry of the thing.
Yes, yes, it really is. It is.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've always loved to be really active and work a lot. And so, my first few years as a teacher, you're always working into the nights. There are always tests to correct and things to do, lesson plans to create. And so there's always a lot of follow up after your day is over. And so I remember when I transitioned into working for myself, I kept that same habit where I would start early and I would finish late. And it's just been, I've really just started to learn that, the best of what you have to offer is going to happen within a limited time set during the day. And you're actually going to be more productive if you give your brain time to shut down completely, do things that you enjoy, find out what those are. And I think that I've gotten better and better at that, at, closing down work at 4 or 5 o'clock every single day, sometimes 3 o'clock. I'll be like, you want to know what? I'm not going to push it any further. And I've really realized I'm the kind of person who would be very resistant to that, to be like, well, if you try a little harder, if you push a little more, then you'll get more done. And then, you'll grow faster or whatever. But, with that attitude, which is very much an attitude that comes from being a teacher, and our schools are push out so much work to do. But I noticed that, with stress and my need for recovery and getting zonked out, I'm way more productive on a limited time slot than I was
Yes.
overworking.
Yes, yes. And it is important to shut down. It is important to go
Yes, it's essential.
a funny show, a Hallmark show. Who cares?
Exactly, something totally light. Yes, those Hallmark romances, especially around Christmas, are so great. And yes, they're totally predictable. And yes, the jokes aren't actually funny, but I love them.
Yeah. Yes. I watch them now. Like there's a few.
Yeah, I do too. They're so uplifting.
Yes. And they're funny and they're so light, and who cares? And,
exactly.
Some kind of comedy, or get on Netflix. And like, I like watching the sci-fi shows on Netflix. And right now we're watching Umbrella Academy, and it's just getting out of your brain,
and letting it rest.
Yes. Because then you'll end up in burnout, and that's a whole separate.
Not going back there. Exactly.
That's a whole other conversation. But do you have any extra final tips? And
I guess I love everything we've kind of talked about together. I just feel like we've hit the biggies as far as the quest begins with questions. Ask for your next creative idea, and don't feel like you have to know everything. Ritual, if anybody's interested in doing like a writing retreat at your home, the yoga staycation. We just came up with that a week ago. From asking, I think that's so important, and just opening up. And even when the time doesn't become obvious, whatever those seeds you plant of creativity are just going to grow and grow. I think we've covered the bases. It's wonderful to be able to talk about this.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you so much for joining me and having this chat. And if you guys have any questions about creativity, or how to get there, or about the different types of questions, you could post below, and one of us will definitely get back to you, and we will respond. And Emily will put a link to your group, so that people,
wonderful. Yes, that sounds great.
If they want to do the staycation thing, that would be, a good thing. And guys, I really think exercise is a big part of this as well. So
Exactly. Yes.
even if it's 5 minutes in yoga poses or 5 minutes with qigong or 5 minutes of, I don't know, walking, just get your
Yeah.
body moving. I think movement also gets that stagnant energy rolling and getting it out and opening up those chakras, and so that you can receive those messages.
Yes. And life just becomes more and more aligned. Tricia, love what you're doing. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. And she's going to put a post to her group, guys. So if you would like to join that and get involved in that, that's great. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks, guys.
So much love.